Blessings, beloveds. Welcome back. Let's talk about the goddess Vesta, one of my favorite asteroid goddesses, who's extremely prominent in my own chart. So I love coming back talking about her. At the moment, she's traveling in the sign of Aquarius and has been for some time, and is in a few days' time, she'll be ingressing into the sign of Pisces. And I want to spend just a little bit of time looking at that picture and feeling our way into that. Feeling is a really good word because Pisces is certainly about many different things, but it's definitely about our feeling state, which sometimes can feel real or delusional at times as well. It's an interesting archetype, Pisces. There's so many aspects to Pisces because it corresponds to the totality, right, of all things. 12th house Neptune Pisces, it's the totality, the oneness, which is a very difficult concept for our left linear mind to even grasp. That the concept of oneness is not something that's logical or rational. We have to intuit what that might actually feel like or symbolize or look like. I've been thinking a lot about Vesta the last couple of days because she reminds me very much of when I need to refocus and realign and recenter myself, right? Because that's essentially what she speaks to, amongst a lot of other themes as well. She's an incredibly mysterious and complex goddess, and she speaks to the work that we do that is behind the scenes, that is private, that is spiritual, mystical, devotional. And she also speaks to the service, the service that we will offer and give from a very deep space within, such as the heart, the soul, and the flame that's contained in our heart. She corresponds to the hearth, fire, flame, devotion, focus, service principles, if you like, in our psyche, in our life, and how we step into those sorts of practices or those sorts of manifestations when we're working with that energy. Vesta is the principle that enables us to focus on any one particular thing to the exclusion of everything else, hence her power. When you focus, if you think about that, when you focus on something, whatever it is, right, whether it's your art, your creativity, music, dance, poetry, love, cooking, gardening, whatever it is, when you put all your focus and concentration and energy into that one thing to the exclusion of everything else, there is tremendous power that is held in that space, in that field, because of that focus that you are putting in there. So this is what Vesta points towards. Now, she's in Aquarius at the moment, and shortly she'll be ingressing into Pisces. And I had a little look back into the last few years, because what happens is that the four main asteroids, which is Ceres, Vesta, Pallas Athena, and Juno, they're the four most popular, if you like, or more known about asteroid goddesses that are often used in astrology, but there are thousands of asteroids actually. But these four goddesses seem to be extremely powerful, not that others are not, many others are as well. With these particular four, there is a cycle where they travel through the entire zodiac around about every 4 years, right? So when Vesta ingresses into Pisces, which is on the 21st of November, that's just in a few days' time, she will remain in Pisces till around about the 8th of February. And on the 23rd of January next year, she will form a conjunction to Neptune in Pisces. Now, she has actually formed that conjunction twice previously. So I've looked at the entire cycle of Vesta in Pisces lining up with Neptune in Pisces. The first occurrence of that was in 2015. So you can think back to those times. 2015, the next one occurred around about February 2019. And now we're going to have another conjunction between Neptune and Vesta in Pisces basically, as I said, on the 23rd of January. So that's basically, from 2015 to 2022, which is, approximately 7 years, we've had a Vesta Neptune conjunction in the sign of Pisces. Now, each time that passage opens up, we're at a different point in our life. So there'll be perhaps different themes, different circumstances that could be unfolding for us. But it'll always come down to that the description and the essence will always be about what is Neptune about and what is Vesta about. So you always need to go back to those core basics, but also apply it into how those archetypes speak to you in your own birth chart. For example, where is Pisces in your chart? So therefore, where is Neptune transiting in your chart, right? Because Neptune has been in Pisces since about 2011, I think it is. And this will be the last conjunction of Neptune and Vesta in Pisces, because by 2026, which would be the next conjunction if it was to occur, Neptune ingresses into Aries. So this is the last conjunction between Neptune and Vesta in Pisces. And I think that's pretty significant because Neptune won't be in Pisces for a very long time again, right? A very long time. It's about 164 years, I think it is, that Neptune takes to work its way around the entire zodiac, right? So this is quite significant. And think about Pisces, it is about surrender, it is about closure, it is about endings, it is about dreams, it is about disillusionment, it is about oneness, it is about spirit, it is about creativity, it is about coming to terms perhaps with dreams that we've had, dreams that have not been fulfilled, the whole thing about dreams, right? Because it is Pisces we're talking about. But before I unpack that further, I was also reading something out of one of my books yesterday, which was kind of a lot of the inspiration to come on today and talk about Vesta, because Vesta being that principle of focus, that centeredness and that focus principle that takes us into our own center, right? Think about when we are pulled in every different direction, as it were, through all the stimulus around us, whether that's social media or whether that's through just the things that we've got going on in our life. Our energy can be very, very scattered, right? And flows into all sorts of different directions. And quite often when we don't recenter, realign, refocus, our energy is drained essentially, right? So the matter of refocus, recenter, realigning, I think is very, very important, whether you're spiritually inclined or not. Pardon me. The matter of refocusing or centeredness exists within and without for infinity. It is a really core principle in the deepest teachings of astrology as well. And I was reading, because I know you will all ask, so this is what I'm reading from. It's a book on the fixed stars by Bernadette Brady. And this introduction page, which is a couple of paragraphs, so I'd ask you to bear with me while I read this for you, because what she describes here is, first of all, extremely profound, and second of all, really encapsulates the essence of this goddess Vesta and the fact that she corresponds to that recentering, refocusing, realigning. So just have a listen to this and reflect on it for yourself and think about it from the point of view of Vesta at the moment, ingressing into Pisces shortly, which I'll unpack some further ideas about that in a minute. So although Bernadette here is referring to the stars and the constellations, when you hear what I've got to say, you'll understand, if you understand the principle of Vesta, which without even knowing extensive knowledge about the goddess Vesta, if you just understand that she really speaks to that centeredness and that devotion and that focus within, then you'll understand what I'm going to read here really does apply to her. And it applies to a lot of things, but it certainly does apply to her. So to understand the importance of fixed stars and constellations in astrology, one must return to the dawn of time and the original role that stars played in human lives. Before time was conceived by the human mind, all was considered perfect. The world was seen as hanging by a thread from the great, immortal, never set timing point, the North Pole star. Seasons came and seasons went, and nothing changed. This was the golden age, the age of perfection, the age of the immortal goddess, when the cosmos and all that was divine was regarded as perfect and in complete harmony. Sounds like Venus to me. The pole star, which the heavens rotating around it every night, was seen as a great mill churning out gold and wealth, the source of life and all order, the point of stillness around which all other things moved. Think about that comment, the point of stillness in which where everything else moved around it, right? So there's that reference to centeredness and stillness, right? Eons later, the Greeks called this point the omphalessa, and I may not be pronouncing that right in English, it is actually a Greek word, coming from the word omphalos, meaning the center of things. In Latin, this is translated as umbilicus, from which we gain the word umbilical, as in the umbilical cord, right? The pole was the earth's umbilical cord, and all power, all strength, and all divinity came from this point. The Babylonians called it the mother bond of heaven. This connection from the point of stillness to the earth was seen in some cultures as a pole or axis, a shaft around which golden milestone turned. Other cultures considered it to be the cosmic tree, the tree of life, and the Garden of Eden, or a measuring rod. Ancient societies structured themselves around the omphalos in an attempt to mirror on earth the immortal life of the heavens, the goddess and mother of the world. Since all power was believed to come from the pole, the cosmic center, it therefore followed that the power, authority, and wisdom to rule could be achieved by occupying this physical center of the tribe or group. Thus, the center position belonging to the king, queen, or chief. This leader sat on a particular rock or stood beside a particular tree and claimed the power of the celestial pole by holding a staff or rod that symbolized the pole or shaft of the sacred mill. Later, this pole became the royal or holy scepter, as well as the sacred sword of the Celts. This philosophy of divine power that came from the center was echoed at all levels of human society, from the very physical seat of government or throne to the central fireplace in every home. Now, I know that's a lot to kind of absorb and take in, and you may need to rewind and pause and whatever, or you may just completely bypass it. Some of you may be interested in that and some of you may not, but I felt very compelled to share these passages because I feel that they are speaking so beautifully and so clearly to the principle and goddess Vesta, particularly that last little comment there where she says the philosophy of divine power that came from the centeredness, that's Vesta, right, was echoed at all levels of human society, from the very physical seat of government or throne to the central fireplace in every home. Now, if you know about Vesta's mythology, every home in Greece had a fireplace, which was a symbol and a representation of the goddess Vesta, the hearth, the fire, the flame. So the fireplace in the homes historically in Greece have been a way of honoring this beautiful goddess Vesta. And it was seen as a reference of protection, purity, purification, lots of other different things. But if you read historically into how governments and systems and kings and, you know, those sorts of things, the architecture in terms of how things are built and created on certain landmarks, right? Certain points on the earth relative to a state or a country. They're not randomly just built anywhere. They are specifically chosen to align with a centeredness of that point on earth relative to that state or that country. There's something very powerful about anything being created, co-created, built, or how we integrate with this life, with this reality from our point of centeredness. And that's why governments and kings and queens and so forth purposely built the physical structure of buildings and churches and you know, all these sorts of things at a centered point relative to the earth and that state, that country, etc. And it's not to say that they are consciously aware necessarily that they are building at that place of center relative to the earth and the poles and the axes and all those things, unless of course they consulted with the magi's, which are astrologers. But there's this unconscious component within all of us that understands this, that organically resonates and relates and understands to the importance of centeredness, right? So that's why I wanted to read that. Now, Vesta in Pisces, let me just bring up a chart so that we can get some visuals happening. And let me just say, it's bloody freezing in Australia, Melbourne, Australia at the moment. We are supposed to be in sort of like the beginning of summer, and I can tell you now, we've had just a couple of warm days here and there, and the rest, like today, it's winter, literally, it's winter. I've got the heater on. Just as a side note. Anyway, okay, so this chart is actually just for today, 15th of November. And you can see there's Vesta there in Aquarius. I'll just highlight her for those that don't know. So that is the symbol for Vesta. There she is at 28 degrees of Aquarius, 28 minutes. And by the 21st of November, she will be in Pisces. Now, as I said, her first ingress into Pisces with a conjunction to Neptune in Pisces was in 2015. So it might be worth just reflecting on that time. Also, February 2019, and then one more conjunction, which takes place in a few days' time. Now, what's the significance of that? Well, the significance of that really speaks to, let's say, a reality, a part of our reality that is not of this reality, that is not of this world. It really speaks to the way in which we might refocus, recenter, realign and reconnect with the divine source creation to all things, with spirit. How we remember by refocusing ourself to the source, the one divine source creation to all things, of which we derive from. This is the significance of the Neptune Vesta alignment, which, you know, for some people this alignment can be neither here nor there, can just pass through their charts and not a lot happens, as it were, right? It just depends on the individual, the level of awareness, the level of one's direct conscious integration with this energy. And I suppose if we're talking about a mundane, everyday manifestation of this, because Vesta also corresponds to investments, right? So the word investment comes from the word Vesta, the goddess Vesta, whose Greek name is Hestia, by the way. And so investments include everything from, you know, the physical to the non-physical, right? the physical components obviously can connect to the world of money, as it were, the material world, investments in properties, shares, etc. It could be an investment in a relationship. It could be an investment on a spiritual journey. It can be an investment into art and creativity, because Pisces certainly corresponds to those kinds of experiences in life. So it just depends where this Vesta Neptune is transiting in your chart. Perhaps it's lining up with other planets in your chart, and therefore those planets, whatever they represent, will also add to the story as well. So there are a lot of variables, because it depends on where this energy is in your chart and just how much one resonates with this goddess Vesta. I guess the thing to kind of really focus on, though, with Vesta in Pisces, is that Pisces represents the completion, right? It's the end of the wheel, the end of the cycle. So, for the last few months, or for the last few months, as Vesta has been working her way through the entire zodiac, and she's now coming to the end of the zodiac. Whatever planet comes to the end of the zodiac, which is Pisces, there is always a theme there that would need to speak to a closure of some kind, right? A finishing of things, a surrendering, a resting period, retiring, resting. When I say retiring, I don't necessarily mean retiring from work as such, but sometimes we need to retire, to rest, right? To recuperate, to realign and recenter our energy. And in Pisces, there is a great call for that. It's a time to surrender to the highest will, which is the divine source creation to all things. And it might be a time of giving something of ourselves as well, from the voice or the call of the divine. So let me just backtrack. Where is Pisces in your chart? Where is Vesta in your chart? That's the area where you are being called to complete and finish something, right, relative to this cycle. And perhaps how can you, what is it that would be calling you into a greater sense of faith and belief, right? Because it's Pisces, right? And with Pisces, it's such an interesting experience when it comes to surrendering and having the deepest of deepest faith and surrendering into the unknown, surrendering into what you can't see is coming, understanding that there is a completion and ending to things in order for a new birth to start, right? And when it comes to Pisces, the calling for trusting and surrendering comes from such a deep place that has no anchors, it has no security, as it were, from that physical level, to give you that sense of okay, I can really let go here. I can just completely trust this process because I know it's going to be okay, because I can see X, Y, Z. I can see the mechanics of how things are coming together. I can see that I'm not going to have any obstacles there. I can see that, all these things are sort of lining up, and I can literally see the physicality of it. That doesn't exist when it comes to Pisces. When it comes to Pisces, it's really about surrendering into what you can't see. It's literally the abyss. So when it comes to the matter of having deep faith and deeply surrendering into trusting the divine source creation to all things, you cannot do it with your mind. It's not possible to do it with the mind, because when the component of our mind comes in, to that, into that journey or that process, it's going to come up with all the reasons as to why you can't let go, why you can't trust, why you can't surrender, and why you need to control everything, as it were, right? So the calling for trust and surrender with Vesta and Pisces is beyond the mind, is beyond your logic, is beyond your intelligence. So it's a very, very deep asking of letting go. And lining up with Neptune, which in evolutionary astrology, Neptune corresponds to spirit, divinity, divine source creation to all things. And when it comes to Neptune, relative to this 3D reality, in the third dimension reality as physical beings, our natural impulse and desire is to have, create, experience, hold on to, attach ourselves to, whether that's an idea, a thing, a person, whatever. When it comes to Neptune, Neptune is the body that dissolves all those forms and structures, which is what Saturn creates, form and structure. So we all go through experiences in life where things dissolve, things leave our life, and no matter how hard we try, we can't hang on to them. No matter how much that hurts or how much we struggle with that process, it'll happen to all of us at various times in our life. So with Neptune, it is about stepping into a space, a field where we can really let go, surrender, trust to the divine plan that you set into motion before you came into this physical incarnation. It's your soul's contract anyway, right? So nothing or no one really takes anything away from us. It just may appear that way in the physical experience, as it were. But when you think about your essence, your core essence, which is infinite, divine and infinite consciousness, which can never be destroyed, but only changed in form, right? So in truth, then, nothing can ever really be taken away from you. The experience of something being taken away from us is our sense of identity and attachment to it, right? And when we have Vesta, Neptune lining up, the call, the invitation is to step into that field of deep trust into the divine plan that you actually collaborated with before you even came into this physical incarnation. So it's a really interesting journey, I think. And one other thing I'd like to, well, a few more things. Think about Vesta as it's an energy that helps us transmute any distortions into the purity of fire. So the fire that is represented by the goddess Vesta is that element that enables us to purify whatever we need to purify. That might be a mindset, that might be a relationship, it might be inner things within ourselves, emotional states, habits, whatever it is, right? The process of purification is very deep, right? And it's a deep spiritual cleansing and clearing, right? So you have Vesta, which represents what I just said, the transmutation of distortions, if you like, things that are a projection, of our desires, let's say, right? Because we all have desires and we all project things, whether we are aware of it or not, whether we admit it or not. So the power of the flame, the fire of Vesta, is to help us transmute those distortions, right? And the reason it's so powerful with the body of Vesta is because of what I said at the very beginning, and that is that what she invokes in us is that power, that great power to refocus and recenter. So if we get into that space, if we open ourselves up into that space to refocus and recenter, and then we have the element of transmutation, right, coming through to remove the distortions, as it were, out of our life. I think that's a pretty prominent and powerful journey to consciously open ourselves up to, right? Because distortions, which can be Pisces and Neptune as well, by the way, relative to a distorted perspective, let's say, right? Because we are viewing something through the lens of Neptune Pisces. And the reason it becomes a distortion is because we are not seeing it as it actually is. This is when we are perhaps projecting an ideal onto a situation or a person or a thing. And we see the ideal, we want the ideal, but when we look deeper, we can actually really see that that ideal doesn't exist in that person or that situation. That's just in our own distorted perspective, right? So it's an interesting thing to contemplate. Also with Vesta in Pisces, because Pisces is a mutable sign, it's water, mutable, feminine. The mutable component of Pisces can be that matter of finding it really challenging to focus on a particular thing or situation or person or whatever it is, or your creative journey or your work or whatever it is, right? Because Pisces is mutable, it flows in and out of everything. It's a chameleon. It's got an incredible ability to morph into any situation. And I know that very well because I've got Venus in Pisces and she's a chameleon. She can morph in and out of anything and everything, you know. Moon in the first house for me and Venus in Pisces, I can blend in and out of any context, situation, environment, experience. I can literally become that experience or that environment. It's so hard to explain because it's not something that I try to do. It's just something that naturally happens organically, right? Because remember what I said at the beginning, Pisces is the totality. It's oneness, the oneness of all things. So when you have strong Pisces energy, there's no identification with one thing. You actually feel everything and everyone in every situation and every context, right? And thus the chameleon shows up because it blends in and out of everything. And that has its complementary components, right? But it also has its shadow components, and that is it can struggle to focus and pull that energy into just one focus in one direction. And so Vesta in Pisces can be that powerful help or assistant in helping us focus that Pisces energy in a holistic and integrated way, depending on what we want to do with it. Do we want to surrender into something that's been very difficult to surrender into? Are we ready to close and complete something that we've invested our time and energy, soul, spirit, heart, money, whatever it is? Remember, Vesta is investments. Coming into Pisces, it means we are finishing something, completing something. So it just depends how we navigate ourselves through this energy in terms of what it means to each of us individually. But certainly the conjunction to Neptune is it's quite an obscure thing, really. It's not, you can't really describe it or approach it logically. It's got nothing to do with logic. It's really a process of. Have you ever been to the dentist and had the gas mask? What's that stuff called? I've just forgotten the name of it. Anyway, it's I suppose it's like taking drugs, right? Where you all your inhibitions go, and you can completely relax and completely surrender, right? I have that gas mask when I go to the dentist because I'm just probably, like overly sensitive when it comes to dental work, and I always have that mask on, that gas mask, and the amount of relaxation that I feel at that time is it's such a Pisces experience. I completely love it. But I guess I'm bringing that up as an example to demonstrate when you're able to really let go and surrender, and just it's like all your inhibitions are just lifted. That part of us that wants to control just diminishes. It evaporates. It goes. We're just in a space of complete surrender and trust, right? That's what it means when Neptune and Vesta come together. You can't control the form and the structure of how you want things to be, or what you're trying to create. It is about creating, but the creating comes from that inspired field, that field of consciousness where intelligence, creative intelligence, is in that field that has no boundaries, it has no limits. So the creation that comes out of that is everything that you see around you in the world, everything, including yourself, right? So imagine that level of creative inspiration pouring through you, and then, giving birth to that journey, right? That's what it could be like with Neptune and Vesta. If you focus, because Vesta is that focusing principle on that energy, or in that energy, or through that energy during this time. So Vesta will be in Pisces from the 21st of November till the 8th of February. So it's about 6 weeks' time. And on the 23rd of January, for a few days there, she will form her conjunction to Neptune in Pisces, and that will be the last one, the last Neptune Vesta in Pisces conjunction for another 160 years. So it's quite profound, right? When you think about it from that context of time, because none of us will be, well, actually we might be reborn then, but we won't be living then in this life, right? So this is, I feel that this does speak to something really, really profound in our own spiritual investment, right? Our realignment with spirit, divine source creation to all things, which is Pisces, Neptune. And Vesta brings in that power to refocus, because you might have been on a journey where you lost track, you lost focus, because your focus has been so enmeshed and engaged in the external world, achieving this, achieving that, reputation, money, status, job, whatever it is, right? And wanting more of that, and wanting it to be bigger, and wanting to be more successful, etc., etc. And not that there's anything wrong with any of that. Everyone is on a different path, on a different journey. But I think regardless of what journey we are on, whether we are famous or not, or a musician or not, or a writer or not, it doesn't matter who or what we are, or what how our journey is unfolding. I think it's fair to say that there is tremendous benefit by remembering where we come from, remembering spirit, and by reintegrating and recentering with that that relationship to spirit, because from my experience at least, and from my understanding, I know that when I recenter my energy and refocus myself to into spirit, that's what recentering is. You're just focusing back into spirit, right? You're bringing that alignment back into place. And when you bring that alignment back into place, and it's like you've turned on that power again. You've turned that volume back up, right? So now you're receiving that inspiration, that energy, that direct channel from divine source. It's always there. It's just that we appear to be disconnected at times, or not tuning into it to our greatest capacity, because we are just so focused with the world of the personality, right? Which is, how am I going to do this? How am I going to get that? How am I going to become this? How am I going to be blah, 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 right? So once again, wherever you are in your journey, whatever you are trying to accomplish, it is always going to be beneficial to remember to be centered within, so that you can be completely focused in whatever task you are trying to accomplish and perform, and to be open to that direct channel of inspiration, which is the infinite field of consciousness that is unlimited. What can be more beautiful than that? That's how I see the Vesta and Neptune energy, and in Pisces, I especially see it in that way. And also, it is very much about certain endings of things and certain completions. And an ending is always typically quite challenging and has a lot of sadness attached to it as well, which is very natural. But the ending is just the opposite coin of the beginning, right? So they're one coin, right? It's just two faces of the same coin. You cannot have an ending without a new beginning. You cannot have a new beginning without an ending. So they literally just sit, they appear to be separated, but they're not. They're the same thing. And that's where we're at with Vesta ingressing into Pisces. And just again, a reminder on that mundane, practical, external level, because Vesta corresponds to investments, you might choose to close a particular investment that you've had. You could have had it for a year, you could have had it for 5 years, you could have had it for 20 years. I don't know. It's different for each person. But there is a sense of closure, completion, and endings coming into this story. So I think I will leave it there. That's more or less what I wanted to share. So it's an energy that I feel calls to the deepest place of trust and surrender and inspiration, that is beyond the world of the personality. And I find that really beautiful and fulfilling. There's not much, for me anyway, there's not a great deal in that external world, the world of the personality, that fulfills me. What I could say fulfills me or inspires me is music, astrology, the stars, and Coco, my cat, and certain people that I love in my life, like my family and certain friends and so forth. But in terms of deep inspiration, it would have to be the connection to the stars and music, and even obviously even bigger than that, it's the connection to divine source creation, to all things, the remembering of that, which I have these moments and glimpses. I've got Vesta in the 12th house, which is the Pisces house, right? So she has an infinite land of inspiration in the 12th house, which I feel and experience in different ways in my life. So anyway, I'll leave it there, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, comments, and questions. underneath this video, and I hope you're all doing well. It's been a pretty intense year, actually. Well, 3 years really, but just in terms of the solar and lunar eclipses in Taurus, which are finally coming to an end, and we've got a new moon in Sagittarius coming up, and I am so looking forward to that. Really need a rest from the intensity of the Scorpio energies. Just Sag is such an inspiring archetype and such an inspiring field of energy and consciousness that enables us to expand in grand ways, actually. Scorpio is necessary. We have to go through death, rebirth, feel things at such deep levels that we are perhaps uncomfortable about. Lots has been exposed since we've been in Scorpio season. So much has been exposed. It's been a very interesting journey. So I'll see you soon for the new moon in Sag. Much love and many star blessings. Thanks for watching.